Hello and welcome to session 3 of our Wednesday series. It's a 5-part series about investment real estate. And today's a little special because I had anticipated doing the webinar in another location and we just didn't have the internet capability where I was. So as a special treat, I thought I'd introduce you to my dog Izzy, because this is not being recorded live. And I thought they might want to, participate a little bit. And then this is Leo. So they may pop in or not. But anyway, so thanks again. I am going to review with you where we've been and tell you where we're going. So in session 1, we discussed what we're saving for. It's really important to know why saving money or building wealth is important. Is it for retirement? Is it to pay for kids' college? You have to have a pretty big why. In order to go through the hassle, quite honestly, of getting a mortgage, picking a property, getting a property manager, making sure you have the right insurances and legal protections. And of course, that's why I'm here, and all of our guest speakers who are participating in the webinar series, we're here to make it much easier for you, and so to help you make a good decision about your future and to streamline the process. We also talked about, my overview of my experience as a landlord and how I picked properties. We talked about why real estate, and we compared it to stocks and how, with real estate, you're putting 25% down. Or if you haven't bought your first home yet, you're putting 3.5% down, 10% down, and how you can start out, with less money and leverage and own the whole asset. Whereas in stocks, every dollar you spend or invest, you get a dollar worth of investment. We also talked about managing risk with Chris Coyne, using insurance with GCA Insurance. And at the end of the presentation, all the contacts for the guest speakers are included in the PowerPoint. And the second session, we discussed mortgages. We discussed, first we discussed 3 strategies to build your portfolio. So my clients are doing one of 3 things. They're generally speaking either going from homeowner or renter to homeowner. That's the first step for anybody. And then if you haven't saved up money since you bought, but it's maybe 5, 7, 10 years, and there's enough equity in your home, you can use what's called a HELOC and borrow money against your home to put down for the new home, and then buy a new property and have the tenant essentially pay back all the debt. And then another strategy is, let's say you have been saving and your current home no longer suits you. What you could do is buy a new primary residence using one of the low down payment options for homeowners, and then convert your current primary residence into a rental property. And the 6 steps for building wealth using real estate are as follows. First, together we'll help you determine your purchasing power. Then we're going to identify areas and property types that fit your budget. We'll visit and analyze properties together. We'll make an offer. We'll go through your inspection and other contingencies, and then we'll lease out whichever property is the investment property, whether you're converting your current primary into an investment or renting out the new property. And then, of course, in that session, Mike Leotone from Center City Mortgage and Investments, he talked about using cash out refinances. I peppered in about HELOCs, which are more local banks, credit unions. And then he also rolled out some investment loans and renovation loans. So go to StacyLovesRealEstate.com for the Tuesday or Wednesday series, the recordings of sessions 1 and 2. The Tuesday nights are a little longer because the guest speaker will be on those. And in some cases like today, I'll be summarizing in the Wednesday series, so it'll be shorter. All right, Landlording 101. So number 1, I've been a landlord for 18 years now, and I started out as a single woman, and I'm still a single woman, and I have partnered with JG Real Estate 4 years ago to manage my properties because I was just too busy with my day job. So that's why I'm super excited to share, what they have to tell you about landlording, and why, using a property manager is essential part of building wealth. I don't know about you, but I would never dream of managing my stock portfolio or my IRA or my 401k. So number 1, you're entering a business relationship. Never forget that your primary responsibility is to maintain a good relationship with your tenant. And that possession is 9/10 of the law. So on the one hand, you want to screen that tenant so that you know their current and past employers and rental history, and you know their credit, you know if they have any evictions in their reporting in their history, criminal records. So you want to use something online that is going to give you some data that, you know, just talking to them or having them fill out an application won't do for you. But also trust your gut. The way they interact with you now will be how they interact with you later. So I think it was Maya Angelou says, when people tell you who they are, trust them. So if you just don't get a good feeling from them and they have a perfect score, you know, you might just not rent to them. And then also make sure that you get their income is 3 times the monthly rent. That is an affordability ratio that is generally acceptable. So if the rent is $1,000, you want to make sure they make at least $3,000 a month in gross income. Or if it's a group of roommates, that their combined income is 3 times that. As well, sometimes if I didn't get a current landlord's reference, but I got a prior landlord's reference, I'm okay with that because the prior landlord has no vested interest in getting rid of that tenant. So just like you want to vet them, you want to be the best possible landlord you can be. Because it is a relationship, you want to provide a clean, safe living environment and demonstrate that you care about the property, you care about them, you're going to be responsible with maintaining the property and making repairs, and you want them to be proactive and feel comfortable to call you to let you know that repairs are needed. Quick tip is after a rainstorm, call your tenant and be like, hey, any roof leaks or anything like that coming in? No? Great. All right. You know, have a great day. So you want to just make sure that, you know, the better the way you present the property, that actually the easier it is to set those high standards and get the property delivered back to you looking, you know, almost as good, if not as good as when you rented to them. And, you know, in some instances, I've had tenants for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and the standard for when they move out is, you know, you charge them for damages minus normal wear and tear, or except for normal wear and tear. And if I have to repaint a whole place after 3 years, you know, usually I'm not going to try to charge the tenant because they've been there for a long time, and having 1 turnover in 3 years saves me a lot of money rather than having 2 or 3 turnovers in that same time frame. So protecting your asset, you know, the very first time you prepare the lease, have a professional do it, and then you can copy the terms later, because it makes no sense to make your mistakes on your first lease. This is your, you know, on your first asset of this class. You want to make sure that you get it right and you protect yourself. So it's not that expensive compared to the protections that it gives you. Usually finding a tenant and preparing the lease and doing all the vetting for you is usually about 1 month's rent. And then property management, you know, JG Real Estate takes better care of my properties than I could myself, because they're doing annual inspections, and if there's no turnover, that annual inspection is telling me, hey, this safety thing came up, we need to, you know, add a new fire extinguisher or whatever it is. And then when there's a turnover, they also go through the property and make recommendations. So they are definitely helping me to maintain my properties so that I can hold on to them longer with fewer, you know, major repairs over that same time frame. So property management, you know, depending on how many units, could run 7 to 10% of, you know, your gross monthly income. $100, you know, a month is something that you could use as a benchmark. And then always collect first, last, and security. And make sure it's certified funds, because checks can take 30 days to bounce. And if you don't have at least 30 days before you have the tenant move in and that check bounces, well, now they have the property. So you want to make sure that you collect those 3 months. After the first year, well, first of all, the security deposit must always be in a separate escrow account. And after the first year, it must be in an interest-bearing account. So you might as well just put it in a separate interest-bearing account from the start. That way you don't have to move the funds. Also, you know, if you allow pets, you know, after that first year, you can't hold more than 1 month's rent in security. So you might consider, rather than collecting a $500 refundable security deposit, you might consider instead to add on a pet rent, like $25 a month instead. when they get, well, first of all, your lease has standard clauses, so have them check off that you require renter's insurance. It's, you know, maybe $15 a month for them to protect the contents of their property. Somebody once explained it to me this way: you know, if you turned an apartment or a house upside down, whatever fell out of it is not covered by the landlord's policy. So that's why it's important for your tenants to get insurance. And then the biggest liability is always going to be personal liability, in terms of somebody trips and falls on the property and they sue the person they were invited to a party at the property you own. They trip, fall, they sue the tenant. You want to be named as an additional insured on that policy, which is free for the tenant to add you, so that way you can, you know, maximize your protection. And then for yourself, make sure you max out on all your liability limits and use a commercial umbrella policy if you have multiple properties to protect all your assets. Lastly, in Philadelphia, you're going to want to keep the water bill in your name, because it's lienable against the property, meaning that if you had them pay it directly and they stop paying, that water bill will be, you know, will stick with the property. And you may not know it until you go to closing and you have thousands of dollars racked up in a water bill. Some bonus tips: you get what you pay for. And, you know, there's an adage that says, you buy cheap, you buy twice. I modified that and say, you buy cheap, you buy thrice, because hopefully you've learned your lesson. So you don't, you know, use let's say a $1 cleaning product. You don't just use twice as much of that $1 cleaning product. You actually say that $1 cleaning product did not work. So now you go and buy the $2 cleaning product. So you might as well just bought that $2 cleaning product to begin with. Also, if you expect to get paid, don't rent to family members. If a family member falls on hard time, we'd like to think that they would make good on their debts to you and pay you the rent that they owe. But I've heard all too often how real estate and money comes between families. It would be better to let them rent somewhere else or stay with you for free. Or if they fall on hard times, don't expect rent from them. And it would be better to keep that relationship than to let this get in the way. And then lastly, there's, you know, housing types out there that are considered specialty housing, like student housing, you know, near universities, and also Section 8 housing. So, you know, I'm not personally a fan of student housing, just because the neighborhoods I rent in, you know, typically you've got a couple of young professionals renting together. We're not allowed in Philadelphia to rent to more than 3 unrelated parties. So I'd rather just have like 3 adult roommates. They have jobs, we're good to go. Versus, you know, if you rent to students, which I'm not advocating against it for anybody, but it is, you know, you will now perhaps be landlording to 3 people who've never lived on their own before, and they all have co-signers. So now you've got 6 people that you're engaged or interacting with and in a business relationship with. So to me, I'd rather keep it simple, stupid, and just rent to, you know, the regular run-of-the-mill people who are renting in the neighborhoods where I'm investing. But certainly there's money to be made in any housing type. You know, I just don't want people to be lured into the idea that, oh, this sounds lucrative and I'm going to make a lot of money there. Because whatever you make in money, you might also pay for. If you earn more money, you might actually pay for it, not with money or losing money, but with your time or aggravation. So you might make more money, but you also might be more aggravated or spend more time, you know, with that property. So I'd rather focus on my day job, which is real estate sales, and pay a property manager, which I think is a great testimony to JG Real Estate, that you have a realtor using a property manager when conceivably this is part of my day-to-day activities, could be managing my properties. But I tell you, it is a highly specialized field, and they do such a great job that they'll help me make more money in the long term, keep my properties in better shape in the long run than I can. So I can focus on my day job. And presumably you have a day job that pays you better than this would in the long run. And then, you know, just when I started with JG Real Estate in 2015, and at first I wanted to be notified of all the showings because I wanted to know, are they going to get me a tenant? Are they showing my property? What's going on? And I really needed 100% transparency. And over the course of 4 years, I would get their annual inspections and turnover reports and recommendations. I would get their monthly statement, and they've connected with my accountant, so it goes directly to him and his bookkeeper. You know, they bill the tenants for water, and they pay that, and you know, they assist with certain licenses that you'll need to stay, you know, in alignment with the law in Philadelphia. In case you ever need to use your enforce your lease, you want to make sure all these rental license protections are in place for you. And they've been arranging for repairs and, you know, with their contractors, getting me better pricing than I probably could on my own, and just making it super easy for me. So after, you know, that, you know, 3.5 years of experience, this past year, I started getting notifications over the summer of my renewals and the showings for my renewals. And I said to them, hey, turn off the showing notifications. I don't need to see that my property is going to be vacant if you can't find a tenant, which they've never failed me yet. So I was like, turn off the showing notifications. I know you'll find me a tenant. And when you find me a tenant, you're going to give me a detailed list of, you know, your recommendations and all the documentation. So it went from, you know, I didn't trust, not that I didn't trust them at first, but I didn't know how they operated. And I saw how they operated. And then over time, the need for transparency into every little thing that they're doing went down, 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 down as the trust went up, 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 and up. And I couldn't be more happy, you know, with the services that I get from them. And in case you're wondering, I don't get paid to promote them. I just think that it's, you know, if I'm using them, you know, I think that's a good testament to what they do for us. So I'm going to summarize Jared Gruber's piece. So I actually met Jared when he was at Keller Williams back in 2011-ish, when he was just transitioning to opening JG Real Estate. He was managing his own properties, and he saw that there was a void in the field and of good property management companies. So he opened up his own business. And he likes to joke that he did not realize how tough it was going to be. I realized pretty quickly what a thankless job it is, and that's why I hired them. Sometimes I feel like I don't pay them enough, but this is how I can repay them and thank them. So, you know, they went from managing a couple units to, I believe it's like 1,400 units in that time span of about 8 or so years. They do leasing, which means just finding the tenant, vetting the tenant, preparing the lease, preparing the renewals, the automatic renewals with the price increase or rent increase. And then that could be a standalone service, or if you have a property with a tenant, they can just start managing the property for you and handling all the day-to-day inquiries about or repairs and maintenance and things like that. Or if you want them to do both, you know, each has its own fee structure. So having a property manager creates that separation between you and your tenants, and that definitely removes, you know, emotions and frustrations. If you've ever negotiated with a salesperson or somebody about something, or like parents, you're like, you know, go ask your father or go ask your mother. Well, what are you doing? You're putting a buffer between you and the person, like the decision maker, and the person who's asking something of you. So by saying somebody else is in charge, it makes it easier to have that conversation, and there's less frustration because, you know, while Jared and his company are managing my properties, you know, interfacing with the tenant, you know, they have to come back to me and say, hey, the tenant's requesting this. We either A, recommend this, or B, you know, whatever they recommend. And then I say what I'm going to say, and he'll tell them, yeah, well, the landlord will do that, or no, I'm sorry, they won't, and this is the reason why. And also it enables, number two, a PM or property manager is beneficial, is because it makes your investment more passive. So real estate can be pretty active. It's a very tangible asset. You know, all of my properties are within a couple miles of where I currently live. I used to live right near my properties, and I would love to live near there again. But yeah, so if you could be really intimately involved with your properties, or, you know, if you hire a professional, that's what they're there to do, is take that day-to-day off your shoulders. Or especially if you've moved out of the city or the state, and you want to keep that asset, let it grow and build wealth for you over time, it's a great time to get a property manager. And of course, the economies of scale, their relationships with contractors, the systems and the processes are invaluable. Compared to, you know, you calling 3 different plumbers and getting a quote. You know, they've got their crew of plumbers, and they're gonna have predetermined prices for certain things. because they, will install a water heater 10 times in a month in different properties. So you're going to, save money that way too. Jared gave this example of, and actually for number one, where you're creating separation, he gave this example of, a tenant could be asking you for something that might cost you $1,000, but you say no, and they get you out of having to do that thing. Well, that's 10 months potentially of property management fees that you didn't have to pay for that repair. So you basically are paying 2 months out of 12 months for property management just by the savings that a property manager can give you. So JG has a bunch of different departments. So they've got a leasing team, agents, coordinators, admin staff, a property management team of property managers, the coordinator. So they always have people in the office on staff. I believe there are about 50 people working there, and they couldn't be nicer. I have people communicating with me about various aspects of my properties all the time. And as soon as a thought pops into my head, sometimes I just respond to the most immediate person I've been talking to, and they're like, yeah, let me loop in so-and-so. And they're super great about it. And I kind of feel like I should do my homework a little better to remember who's who, but they've been so great about just making sure everybody's kept in the loop about my questions and about keeping my properties up. And then lastly, an accounts team, their bookkeeper, everything's ACH. So all the funds are deposited electronically in my account once they receive it from the tenant. So it's super seamless. All right, so licenses, regulations, and utility forms. So this is the section where you need to make sure that you have certain licenses in place in order to enforce your lease and protect your asset in Philadelphia. If you're not in Philadelphia, you'll want to find out from your municipal authority what the equivalent licenses might be and requirements. So number one, you want to get the commercial activity license. This is for any business you are conducting in Philadelphia, not just being a landlord. So this just tells Philadelphia that you are doing business in Philly. It used to be called the business privilege license. When I got it, I paid $250 for it. Then it became $300, and then they made it free a couple years ago. Then once you get that number, you will get a housing license or a rental license per unit that you're going to rent out. So if you're going to rent out a single family house, that's one license for $55 a year. And that goes for the calendar year. And then if you live in a duplex and you have 2 units, but you live in one, that's still only one rental, so $55. But if you rent out a duplex and they're both rented, that's 2 units, so that's $110. And everything has to be paid online at clips.com. or eclipse.com. But anyway, so I can connect you with those resources. So just reach out to me. And then once you get that, and every time you have a new tenant, you have to provide the rental suitability certificate. And it's going to ask you a bunch of questions, to make sure you're providing a clean, safe housing unit for that person. They're not going to come out and inspect. It's free, and once you get the commercial activity and the rental or housing license, then you can get the rental suitability. And the rental suitability, if you had a tenant move in and out in 6 months, you'd need to provide one to each new tenant. But if you had a tenant move in and out in 6 months, you just need the one housing license for the year. And then if you have a tenant that's going to have a 6-year-old child or younger living in the property, you'll need to get a lead disclosure certification. I just had a client do that for a 1-bedroom unit. I think it was about $150. Actually, it was pretty quick turnaround, and I can connect you with the company that did that. And then Philadelphia Gas Works. So gas is also a lienable item, meaning that if you go to sell the property and your tenant never paid for their gas usage, you will be responsible for that gas bill as the owner of the property. So if you sign up for the Landlord Cooperation Protection Program, then if that's basically you saying if PGW has to go after your tenant, you will cooperate in getting the money from the tenant for them, and then you will not be held personally liable. And lastly, PECO and PGW reversion. You just want to make sure that if the tenant leaves the property and calls to cancel the service for PGW, which is gas, or PECO, which is electric in Philly, that instead of turning those services off, you want those to be reverted to your name. And that way you have seamless, uninterrupted service at the property. For example, when my properties require turnover, and it might be 7 days of, you know, doing new flooring, painting the place, I still want electric on. I need electric on, and I perhaps still need, you know, the gas on. Maybe it's winter and I still need to heat the place. So you don't want those utilities to turn off. Some self-management tips that Jared just wanted to put out there is, you know, think about the pros and cons of allowing for pets. So pets will definitely draw a larger pool of renters, especially in our city. And an emotional support animal is not actually a pet. So you want to make sure that the person who says, I have an emotional support animal or a therapy animal, that they provide proper documentation, but they're not considered a pet. So you cannot not rent to them because of that pet. And larger dogs don't necessarily equal larger damage. So Great Danes happen to be very lazy big dogs, and they might lie on the couch for 12 hours at a time. Whereas you might have other ones, you know, that are constantly running around the house that might be hurting dogs, that their nails are digging into the carpet or the flooring. So just, you know, you want to balance the widening the pool, but also with maintenance, you know, of the overall condition of the home, and also the accessibility for maintenance people to come in and out. You know, I won't say anything more about that. But also with cats, don't let cats use kitty litter in the basement. Make sure that they keep their kitty litter on the first or upper floors, because I've had a bad experience where, you know, cats get in those Philly basements and it's dusty and dirty down there, and they see that corner and they're like, that's my toilet, and it's really hard to get that smell out. I mentioned before, the city doesn't allow more than 3 unrelated parties to live in one household, so you want to make sure that, you know, if you have 3 single adults living together, that's fine, but if you add a 4th one, they better be married to one of those adults or siblings or related somehow to one of those adults. And lastly, you want to structure your leases with automatic renewal terms. So the way they structure their leases are, you know, you as a tenant must give us 90 days notice prior to the lease end term. If not, your lease will automatically renew at a rental increase of 5%. So if the tenant doesn't reach back out to you or the property manager within that time frame or prior to that time frame, then they've automatically renewed for the following year. I will say that I've had tenants say, hey, you know what, I'd love to stay, but 5% is a little steep, and could we lower it to 2%? And I'm like, you know what, we can do 3 or 4%, and we'll negotiate that, because they're good tenants, and I want to, you know, make them feel happy about staying and have a good relationship with them. So while 5 might feel high, it's just a starting point for negotiations. And I would always recommend do increases annually, because it's like boiling a lobster. You got to do it gradually, because suddenly you might, year after year after year of no increases, realize you've severely under rented the property and you are nowhere near market values, as I spoke with a client the other week, and that will hamper your property's values if you are under rented, because investors, if you want to sell it, an investor is going to look at the income, and they'll only pay you what you're currently getting in income. And if you're getting, let's say your rental income could be $4,500, but you're still at $3,000 for your triplex, well, you're losing $1,500 worth of value. And just to put that $1,500 in perspective, that's the equivalent of a $300,000 mortgage. So if you are under renting your properties year after year after year, or not keeping up incrementally, you are severely devaluing your property in the event you do need and want to sell that property. So just incrementally keep those rates up, so that way the property values keep up, and then you don't have to make a severe jump from one year to the next. So if you would like to get more information from Jared about property management or leasing, you can email him at jared@jg-realestate.com. Please also CC Gwen on this, Gwen, Gwen at jg-realestate.com as well, and you can check out their website. Lastly, Hosts for Hospitals is a charity that or an organization I am passionate about because, you know, if you're like me, you want to give, and sometimes you might not have the money to give, but you do have an extra bedroom in your house. This is a way to give back to people and extend hospitality to people who are visiting our city using our hospitals. We have the best hospitals, and you know, a lot of people come here and they can't afford everything that's involved in treating themselves or their family for their specialized diseases. And just having a very affordable option of a place to stay while they're visiting, you know, it might cost them $200 a night in a hotel or an Airbnb, but it would cost them $20 to go through this organization of hosts who are opening their homes to them. So, you know, a $1,400 additional bill in addition to airfare and food and the treatments and the co-pays and the insurance could be from $1,400 to $140. And that would be all because of you and your sharing and your hospitality. So, you know, Hosts for Hospitals, you can email them lodging@hostsforhospitals.org. There's a mutual interview. They come to your house to make sure it's a suitable space. And then you also make sure it's a suitable, you know, organization for you to work with. And whenever there's a need, they'll just email the list. And if you can accommodate, you can. If you can't, you can't, you know. So it's really a low commitment, but high impact way you can participate in our medical community and give back to the city that we love. Lastly, in 2 weeks, we've got the Analyzing an Area and Property for Rentals and Flips. So we're going to do a couple of math exercises. We'll also have our attorney, Alan Nachumson, on the call. And again, here's the schedule. After that week, we've got Ryan Fisher from Camaplan. So we'll be talking about using a self-directed IRA. Instead of investing in stocks, bonds, Wall Street, you can actually have your self-directed IRA invest in real estate. And of course, all the contact information for all the speakers is right here on your slides. And if you would like a PowerPoint or a PDF of the PowerPoint, please email me, Stacy, S-T-A-C-Y, @phillyliving.com, and I will be happy to email that to you. And then last but not least, these are some more resources that will help you in your investment journey, kellerinc.com. So the Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Hold and Flip, amazing resources, as am I for you, to help you, you know, the 6 easy steps to wealth building, which is number 1, determine your purchasing power. Number 2, we'll find the properties in the areas that fit your budget. We'll visit and analyze those properties in step number 3. We'll make an offer, step number 4. Step number 5 is doing your inspections. And step number 6 is we're going to make sure you get whichever property is going to be leased out. And each one of those steps we can do together. So I look forward to helping you build wealth for whatever is your big why. Thanks for watching.